So what brings you to the philosophy tag?
I was actually going around asking people what their thoughts are on veganism.
I'm not. I mean, I'm not vegan, so. Um, but philosophy, to some extent, is all about the implications of an idea. So, like, if we think about veganism as an ethical theory, if we commit to veganism, that means we imply certain general principles that if you are to agree, if you are to justify veganism on a principle basis, those principles then must apply universally. So we have this. You always have this interesting problem of universalism whenever you apply, especially in morals. And so the question of veganism is, well, what does it imply, or what is its principle? And I mean, do you have any answers to that question?
Like the question of universalism. Like I don't
Well, what are the
quite
principles
understand
of
the question.
veganism? So,
Like I define veganism as a philosophical stance against animal exploitation, mainly. Yeah.
okay, good. No, that's a good answer. So basically, humans should leave the animals alone. Is that like a
Yeah.
somewhat
Basically,
more
we should
lightweight thing?
afford them the negative rights of their own life and bodily autonomy and the right to not be harmed intentionally.
Now, I can see that there could be some potential conflicts here. Like, let's say, like some dog goes rabid and is terrorizing children in the neighborhood or something like this. How do we deal with that problem?
Well, it's just like we deal with human rights. Actually, like it's okay to defend yourself when someone is attacking you. In the case of
Okay.
animals, it would be the same. Yeah.
But like now, so this is, I mean, there's always got to be some sort of boundary in this, right? Like you can talk to anybody on the street, right? You can walk up to somebody, say hi. You can interact with people, and it's not considered like threatening. But what if you have like that Karen who like is just annoyed that the dog is barking, like, and insists that is violence done towards her? How do we deal with that situation?
So, would you think that it would be justified for her to be like, okay, kill the dog right now on the street?
Well, I don't want to make a normative claim about what I
Okay.
believe, because I like to keep things theoretical and not
Well,
too.
I'm asking you about what you believe.
Well, I think Karen is an idiot, and Karen thinks that the world revolves around her, and she's about 13. She's still a 13-year-old girl in her mind, and like, but I mean, the thing is that argument. Karen would probably try to break your reasoning by claiming or by trying to extend that boundary farther. So, what about the principle precludes, like, sort of comment? Because this is a hard thing when you come up with principles. They are going to include. It's very hard to make a principle that doesn't include something that you would think is otherwise absurd.
I mean, I guess there are exceptions, but the main rule applies in most cases. I think that's what's most important.
I mean, fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, most rules work that way, so it's not. It's not. I mean, I'm not saying it's an unfair statement. It's
Yeah.
what about the idea of like owning animals then, like as pets? Because obviously you constrain the pet, and you do kind of. I mean, you quote civilize it when you train it. So like you basically brainwash the dog or the cat into behaving a particular way.
I think the problem with owning pets and buying pets from breeders is like the breeding is mostly the problem in my opinion.
Okay.
But I don't
But
think there's anything
you
wrong
don't
with rescuing or adopting dogs or cats.
and so you don't think there's anything wrong with like sort of manipulating their behavior with food and rewards and
To be perfectly honest, I haven't looked into that enough to really give an opinion on that. If that's okay.
okay. No,
Yeah.
that's perfect. I mean, no, that's the honest answer. When I when I try to take an idea like that seriously, immediately my thought goes to like, what are these boundary cases, and what would that how would that change the culture? Because I mean, like we tend to love and care for things, but we tend to love and care for things within a sort of cultural norm, and if we want to or we set up like certain boundaries around things. Even if we love and care about them, there's still like limits to the thing. What would you like ideally? Let's say vegans got to be in charge of the government. Like, how would you go? How would you like propose that we go to a meat-free society in a way that you think would be reasonable?
Okay, in a hypothetical scenario that vegans are in charge of the government, I mean, there are some vegans that would say like abolish it right away.
Hmm.
Others would say like gradually phase it out. For me, it's more about like changing people's minds and advocating for animal rights and trying to get people persuaded of that, and
Okay.
then like gradually phase it out.
So how
Because
I
that's
mean,
also how practically it would happen if it will happen.
I think of it as in like a broader context, like what's the more general like social trend that leads to people wanting to be vegan? And I describe it in this kind of a way. Like there's a general cultural movement towards making things more anthropomorphic over time. So if you look at like the distinction between where people were like 2, 3, 400 years ago, people
Hmm.
anthropomorphize less things like, I mean, like you provide less rights to other people, you provide less rights to different types of people, you provide everything, like more things can be sacrificed for the benefit of of a particular group of people, whereas the remaining people are considered to be outsiders or things not like considered to be valued, or if they are valued, they're very valued to a lesser degree. And so this expansion of making everything more anthropomorphized, you I think that the vegan movement is part of this process, right? Because you're anthropomorphizing, you're applying human characteristics, human traits, and treating animals more and more like you would yourself, but more specifically other humans.
I mean, I kind of agree with that to some extent. I think it's been like we've just gradually been increasing our circle of empathy, like a
Yes.
moral
Yes.
circle, to include more beings. And I think veganism has recognized not that animals have human traits, but that they have sentience like we do, and they have they have their own subjective experience, and they have their own capacity for experience and feeling and stuff that we should respect.
Because I think most people who are like resistant to the idea of veganism are probably unconscious of reasoning for why they are resistant. Would you say that's true? Like they just do it out of habit more than anything else.
I think most people do. Yeah.
Like have you been vegan since you were really young, or
No, actually, I've been vegan for a year and a half now, so it's really not that
okay?
long. Yeah.
What was the like emotional change that happened, or what was yeah, what was that feeling like?
Well, it was when was it? 2021 in the summer. I started researching about this. Um, I'd recently also left the church that I was raised in, so I was already open minded. Started
Hmm.
researching about veganism, animal rights, reading books about it, watching documentaries, looking at actual footage of these animals in animal agriculture, in factory farms and stuff, and realizing that I was the one paying for that, and that I didn't want to be responsible for that anymore. And that's what caused me to change.
Interesting. One time on here, I met a guy. He was a slaughterhouse worker,
Oh,
and
interesting.
he went on a rant one time about his knife collection, and he just very in graphic detail described, cut me off if it's too much, but him
Mm-hmm.
gutting a rabbit that he shot. So he shot the rabbit and then he cut it open and all of this. And like at this guy, maybe that was the most on Omegle, at least the most strident person I ever saw against veganism. But I think his reasoning went something like he just really loves like being able to kill things. Like yeah, like there's something about like ripping
Mm-hmm.
something like, I mean, in a kind of like I think working at a slaughterhouse has to be kind of a that's kind of a you have to have a certain
Yeah.
like disposition to do that.
No, it has been proven to lead to like increased risk for like PTSD and depression and domestic violence and stuff.
Like that's something I also think is interesting here. Like there's no like it's I think veganism is probably a city phenomena and not a country phenomenon. Like maybe some people in the country become vegan, but I think all those people wind up moving to the city for the most part, or are more like city people than they are like country people. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there are more like vegan restaurants and processed vegan foods in cities and stuff. So if
The,
you wanna have that, then move to the city, I guess. But you can
now,
also just live off whole foods and live in the country and be vegan there as well.
the most like sort of critical argument of veganism I've heard is it requires like a techno-industrialized capitalist society in order to be able to support any large number of vegans.
I would disagree because most of agricultural land and resources are for animal agriculture right now. Like Oxford did this study, kind of researching like if the world went vegan and we wouldn't need all that pasture land and land to grow crops for livestock, we would only need 25% of the land that we use now.
Hmm.
Yeah, so we would
Well, I
need
mean,
less
like
resources,
I,
less
I think
water,
that
less energy. Yeah.
it's not from like a strict calorie basis, but from like a nutrition basis. It's very difficult to get like all your amino acids that you need from like certain amino acids have to come from like I think it's like nuts, eggs, or like mostly these foods come from certain animals, or mostly these amino acids come from certain animals. So in order to get a healthy supply of these necessary materials to live, you have the only like really effective way to get them is to synthesize them. Do you think is that accurate, or do you not think that's accurate?
And what's your source for that?
Um, like a friend of a friend who we were having a
Yeah.
discussion with about this.
Well, it is the case that most health organizations and nutrition organizations across the world, like the WHO and the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, all have stated that a plant-based diet can be healthful and nutritionally adequate for all stages of life.
I
So
mean,
I
do
would say that
you
is not the case.
like what do you do to get like protein? Like what do you eat?
Oh, there's protein in lots of, mostly in like beans. There's in tofu, in grains, in anything really. They're in different quantities, but the thing is like if you eat enough calories in plant foods and you eat a variety of plant foods, you will get enough protein in your diet. It's not as difficult as people think. You just need to learn like what foods they're found in mostly. You have to just
Okay,
maybe
maybe his
educate
point. Maybe
yourself.
I'm misremembering his point slightly because I think his point was okay. So like not maybe it was you had to import some of these foods like from abroad and they don't aren't seasonal. So if you want like most of these sources, they have to either be shipped in from foreign countries.
I mean, when it comes to like animal products, the transport and stuff really doesn't matter as much as the production of it and the raising of the animals. Because in beef, specifically beef and dairy cows, they emit so much methane that it pales in comparison.
I wonder somebody probably has written an essay to the title of like why veganism is immoral. I wonder what they would say.
Yeah, why would it be immoral? Do you think?
Yeah, let's see here. Well, I would say it'd have to be immoral because you're like violating human rights to some extent because you're constraining a person's autonomy and freedom of will and freedom of choice
Don't
to
you
act
think
and
we're
behave
doing
as they.
that to animals more?
Well, but like the reasoning would have to be like, well, people are more important than animals, and so we can't like, but like animals clearly have no qualms about killing each other and being very violent and brutal about it. And so I would, so somebody might argue something like it's against nature because if we really like care about the like or if we really care about the animals, we would allow the animals to live in the way that they choose fit instead of trying to like make them peaceful. Because I would think the next sort of step after sort of giving animals rights is then how do we make the animals be at peace with each other? Like we animals are constantly killing each other and they're constantly being incredibly violent. Like, how do we stop them from being aggressive towards each other? Can we like make the foxes vegan as well?
Yeah, I mean that's a whole different area of veganism. That is kind of like that's what we would be worried about after the whole animal agriculture and system of animal exploitation that exists in this world today. That treats animals as commodities and stuff. If that were abolished, then we would be interested in wild animal suffering and stuff. I'm personally not at the moment very interested in doing anything about that right now. But I do think that nature is a cruel place, and that since we as humans have the option not to kill animals, and we don't need to anymore to survive or be healthy, that we shouldn't.
This is really interesting. Like, is this discussed very much amongst vegans that you know?
Yeah, I mean it is discussed. I mean it's kind of a fringe thing, but it is kind of. But I would say that in that case, like we're not the one inflicting that. Like we're actively hurting animals and harming animals by buying animal products, whereas the wild animal suffering is not our responsibility. So it's not directly our responsibility to fix that either. And I would say that animals in the wild, they do still need to eat each other to survive for the most part. So there's a level of necessity there that we don't have.
I haven't really thought about this much, but this is really super fascinating. I'm like, do you know like? Do you know any propositions that people have about like how to like reduce animal suffering in the wild by like reducing conflict? Do people have like proposals on ways to go about doing that?
Well, I know a vegan YouTuber is very concerned with that. I can share his channel if you want. I don't personally know the arguments that he makes.
Please, I would appreciate that.
Let's see. He's called Humane Hancock.
So me personally, I try to not have like moral dispositions or moral like hang-ups when I talk to people, especially on Omegle. Like I'm very open and I very much like to understand people from their own perspective. There's one guy I met on here. He described himself as like an animal rights person. Like he doesn't like mistreatment of animals. He doesn't like zoos. Mm-hmm. He really hates zoos. But he was not vegan, and he was very in favor of like hunting and all of this kind of stuff. And his reasoning for like his love of animals was like, we need to let the animals be wild and free and do what they want. Like he said, he was like, there's nothing worse than seeing a lion or a tiger in a cage, because once you put them in a cage, it's like you've killed who they are, like what their nature in them.
Well, I'm also against zoos, of course, keeping animals in a cage and stuff, like however big, makes them depressed. Like there's been these cases of like elephants swaying back and forth because they're like going crazy. Yeah, I would say it's inhumane.
His argument was something like this: it's like things have a spirit or a soul in and of themselves that's immutable or unchangeable, and you can't fix it. And if something has a particular soul or spirit, and you try to repress that soul, then you commit some sort of crime, because you're not letting somebody be their truly authentic self. And if you want, and like specifically in the case of animals, if you want them to be authentic to themselves or their nature, you have to let them kill each other. You have to let them like be violent. So like and he very much took this from like the aspect of like beauty and like awe or reverence of nature. Like nature is this wonderful thing. It's beautiful. Why should we as humans try to impose something upon, like ruin this thing that's, there before us and isn't a part of us?
I mean, I feel like he's really idealizing nature in a way that I wouldn't. Although I don't know if I would go as far as like really, like you said, like some vegans want to actually like change nature and keep animals from killing each other. Like, I don't know, like what I would do, and I don't think it's really relevant right now. But I wouldn't idealize nature in this way because it's obviously cruel. I don't think it's a morally good thing, nature.
That's an interesting line. I don't think it's a morally good thing, nature.
Is it okay if I don't want to argue against your interpretation of an argument someone else made? Is that okay?
No, that's fine. You can say whatever you want. And so you literally can say anything. But his point was more about like the general like he said over civilization of people. Like he thought like we lived in a society with too many rules, with too many limits on free expression, and that those should be pushed to a pretty high boundary where he was like advocating like dueling as a like dueling should come back because like if you're really upset at somebody and you really want to like fight them, you should be allowed to fight them, right? So
Oh
that's where this
God.
is, right?
No, I really disagree with that. Why? Why? Why would you actively advocate for violence when it's unnecessary?
Well, he was like it's in people's nature, right? Like if it's
I
like
mean,
who they really are.
I wouldn't say it's in humans' nature. Well, I mean,
It's definitely in some people's nature to kill other people.
even
I
if
would
it is in
I would
humans' nature to be violent, I wouldn't say that we should just do it because it's natural. Especially since we are able to make moral choices, I think we should, make more moral choices.
because his argument was not what he would deny that that was immoral, right? He would just flat say, how can it be wrong to do something that like is a he was really obsessed with the idea of things being true to themselves.
Well, I
And
think that's just
obviously
a really psychotic way of thinking if you really extend
it
it
probably is. It
that
probably
far.
is.
Yeah. You wouldn't say that what he said was reasonable, right? Or do you think he has a point?
Look, I don't. I try not to judge people's opinions. Like, is it reasonable or unreasonable? I mean,
Do you personally have any opinions on anything?
well, I mean, I do have opinions. I don't have an emotional feeling of I look at an animal and I see the animal and like you can like a dog or a cat or something, but I always think of it as like subhuman. And so I
Right.
don't have like an emotional attachment to like how it feels at the end of the day. Like I just think it's an animal. If I see like a spider, I won't squash it. But like at some level, it just becomes too disruptive to like life and human endeavors. And and I don't think I just don't think that it's important at the end of the day. Like there's so many other things to be interested in. There's so many other concerns.
I have a few points. Let's see if I can organize them all in my head. But first, I don't think, like, if you're vegan, you don't need to see animals as morally equivalent to humans. You can still see them as inferior. But just because they're inferior doesn't mean that we have the right to murder them whenever we want, is what I would say. Because what we're
Well,
weighing, we're not weighing our life against their lives. We're weighing their lives against our taste, pleasure, and our convenience and stuff. That's basically what we
mhm.
exchange their lives for. So that's what I would say. I don't think they're necessarily equal, but that also doesn't give us the right to kill them for things that are not really necessary.
I ran over a rabbit one time when I was driving. Right,
Yeah.
I saw the rabbit. It's too late to respond. I hit the rabbit, and I was like, I felt sad, and I drove back, and I came back down that same path 30 minutes later, and I saw the dead rabbit there on the road, and I was like, oh, that sucks. And I didn't want to hurt the rabbit. If I'd seen it, I would have stopped. I would have waited for the thing to move on. But the fact that I hit it doesn't bother me. Like
I mean,
it's
that's an
like
accident. That's an
yeah, it's an
accident.
accident.
Yeah.
It definitely was an accident.
But I wouldn't say just accidentally running over an animal is the same thing as, breeding animals into existence, like billions of animals every year, just to like mutilate and exploit them and kill them at the end of the day at a fraction of their lifespan. Like that is more akin to
Well,
like animal slavery than it is to accidentally running over an
yes,
animal.
but like no, I agree. Basically we do animal slavery. But like my point is still it just
You
like
personally don't care.
if it makes one person just a little bit happier or have somebody have a little bit of a better day, like isn't that worth it? Like life isn't always fun, and if you have like a little something that makes you a little bit happier or makes your life a little bit easier or makes you appreciate being alive more, and that might be having a burger.
I mean, that is provided that, I mean, humans can't get their pleasure from anywhere else, which I think they can. And I don't think that any amount of pleasure justifies the killing of a sentient life. Also, when it comes to humans, I wouldn't say like if someone wants to murder another human because it would bring them a lot of pleasure. I don't think that's a justification for killing them.
I'm trying to think about the structure of that argument.
So first, that humans can get their pleasure as elsewhere, and also that pleasure is not a
Okay,
justification to cause harm.
like there are some extremely poor parts of the world, like say India, and I mean a lot of people are vegan in India, but like there's still like a lot of farms that run on animal labor, and there's still the best celebrations are going to be celebrations or events that involve like killing an animal, like sometimes even ritualistically. I mean, those are often deeply held beliefs in those cultures, and they're very important to those people. Like, do I have a right to go to another culture and tell them that they can't practice the way that they practice because I have a moral conviction that they shouldn't do that?
Okay.
Like, what do you think of that kind of reasoning?
That's like you would say that culture justifies certain practices.
Well, I would say I
Yeah.
don't have the authority to. My moral purview doesn't. It only really includes my culture and not other cultures. Like we obviously impose moral rules on people, but like we kind of limit that typically to people within.
You froze. Well, that was an interesting discussion. I mean, I wished I could have like ended it properly without him freezing. Some interesting points were brought up. I didn't expect to be arguing against an argument that he heard from someone else that he doesn't even personally believe in. That was annoying. It was most annoying that he just did not want to give his own opinions on things. So that's what most bugged me about that. But other than that, he's a smart guy. He doesn't seem to care about animals. I mean, he said that he's like it's if it causes someone a bit of pleasure to take away an animal's life, then they should do that, which is a little psychotic thinking. I wish I could have spoken to him more on that, but that's a little disappointing. But that's how Omegle goes. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Please support the channel by subscribing and liking the video. And yeah, see you in the next one.